So, what's really going on inside the various agencies, the Department of Justice, and other agencies? We know a few things are happening right now. Number one, Donald Trump has ordered, by way of one of these executive orders and memorandum, a communications blackout. So, the typical things that these agencies and groups would report as a matter of course, whether it's medical statistics from the NIH data, the same way Donald Trump would say, stop the testing. If you don't test, then you don't say that there's a lot of illnesses. Remember that back in COVID? Well, there's a version of that now, but across all agencies. Don't report your data. So do we know, for example, with consumer related agencies, if prices are going up? I mean, part of what government is it works for we the people. It's not confidentiality agreements. It's not non-disclosure agreements. It's not private corporations. It's as public gets. We are entitled to this information. We pay our tax dollars. We deserve this information. But basically, think about Trump's public blackout as an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement for the entire government is basically what's going on. And he has to approve, or just his topics have to approve. So we have that. Then you have Donald Trump's anti-DEI initiatives, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is so vaguely worded that what is it even referring to? If you're DEI, you must be reported immediately and get fired or get removed because DEI is, Donald Trump says, a threat. It's part of a deep state plot. I mean, like literally promoting diversity within organizations in a diverse nation, el pluribus unum, out of many one. I saw Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader, minority leader, say, you realize that like literally one of our founding mottos is basically diversity and that we come together as a nation in a melting pot. That's what I learned growing up. But these DEI initiatives are more pernicious as well because it basically creates the witch hunt. Are you DEI? Are you DEI? Oh, this person's DEI, right? It's McCarthyism, probably on steroids, because you just say, oh, are you a communist? Are you are you DEI? Are you DEI? And that's how it's intended to be used. And then, of course, there's the new Trump administration officials who come into these agencies and just start ruining people's lives and making people's lives who worked in the government a living hell. That's not even for me to get into the hiring freezes and the freezes on research and for medical centers. And so people who are on, doing trials to save their lives may not get life-saving care. But Harry, you know the DOJ better than just about anyone. Fourth floor guy, meaning you were one of the top officials at the Department of Justice. You were a United States attorney. What are you hearing? What do you know about this? The chilling effect? What's going on?
So where to start? You and I, in a different conversation, talked about how chaotic at the level of the orders themselves are. But you've got to appreciate that where things really hit the road and aim to implement this, and it's all part of, I think, the kind of upfront work. The essentially Project 2025 folks who recall Trump said, I'm not paying any attention to that. I'm not going to run my government by that. Surprise, surprise. It's exactly what he's doing. But when you think about the actual sort of on the front lines of what's happening. So DOJ, I do know best. And we can also talk about State Department, DEI, et cetera. But there are people who have now come in, and they regard the professional career staff there, the heart and soul of DOJ, they regard it with, suspicions and deep state actors who are going to be opposed to them, and they are going to absolutely use brass knuckles to make them take the party line. So, what you said about DEI, it's a really good example. You have at subsidiary agencies, if people aren't with the program, let us know. It's a good thing. We're getting perilously close to forget McCarthy. Iron Curtain, Soviet kind of stuff where, Stasi takes down names and information. And I think people are already being like afraid to speak their mind. And the DEI the way you put it's a very good example, because, okay, you understand the notion of trimming back on some of the more extravagant applications of an anti-discrimination principle. But the way it's been stated is basically, as you say, to just wipe out what is a social complete consensus from Johnson and before against basic discrimination. I think under Trump's proclamation, they could undo Truman's order desegregating the military or any kind of rank discrimination, which it's always been accepted. Well, that's terrible and that can't be done. That also is within the crosshairs. Another good example, though, which I do know well, so the immigration, which it just seems like there's no kind of nasty, cruel effort that they're not undertaking, and this always is sold as we're getting the really violent criminals, the marauders crossing the borders, like he said to the bishop who dared to say to him, have some mercy. It's all bullshit. It's just trying to get at people whose crime is not having legal status. But the U.S. attorneys in the field, and including now many offices where the U.S. attorney's already gone and sort of Quisling has been installed, have been instructed by the Attorney General, Todd Blanche, to try to put together cases against any localities or states that dare to be resistant. Like, for example, the political consensus has been to have some kind of sanctuary, to be actually welcoming of immigrants. Nothing against the law there. That would be a normal political kind of, tug of war. But they want to actually bring federal criminal charges, and you're going to have, and I have an understanding there already is, kind of, calls around from the Deputy Attorney General's office. What are you doing about this order to try to, spend your resources against the sanctuary city? So, the sort of net demoralization within the department for people who have been proud for years to stand up and say, so-and-so for the United States, to do either crappy work or things that I'm not even sure are lawful. And then in addition, they have gone, and this has their counterparts at other agencies, but at DOJ, 15 of the most important leaders for years at the career level of the criminal division and the national security division have now basically had the equivalent of, you can do some asset forfeiture in Alaska, or even worse, sort of put in charge of some of these new reversals of things they've been doing for years. And what I'm trying to say is the net kind of behavioral effect. You take the presidential level, then it's you go out through into the department through the new appointees. You see 20 people, or the 15 that I mentioned, who are completely made miserable. What about everyone else? There's nobody at DOJ now, including in the 93 field offices, who isn't saying, do I cross people? I like this job, but do I quit it? I've got kids in school, maybe not, but I better shut up and forget about. They've put a freeze on all sort of civil rights institutional cases. It's just been completely transformed, and this is a way of getting, if not willing, at least not resistant people on the ground where it all happens. And man, it's ugly. It's not just legally ugly, it's behaviorally ugly, institutionally ugly. That's what, the real game plan in authoritarian states is, to get, people cowed, intimidated, and to bring them into line, whether or not you specifically slap them around, as long as they know what could happen to them. DOJ is a very good example. It's not the only one, but it is really a sea change that is making people afraid and disgusted.
Well, you mentioned how DEI and framing it that way is a way to engage in all this other kind of pernicious conduct. And earlier this week, Trump revoked the Equal Employment Opportunity Executive Order of 1965, which LBJ signed. The order prohibited employment discrimination in federal hiring based on race, religion, and gender. And what Trump and the MAGAs claimed is that by promoting people or focusing on diversity, you were being discriminatory towards white people who deserve those jobs by even focusing on sex, race, gender, all these other aspects as just a thing to say you shouldn't discriminate. They said that's discriminatory.
And if people in the private sphere discriminate, what did we call those things in 65? How do we say them? The Great Society. Now this is the absolute discredited society. It is really revolutionary.
Well, Harry, one of the ways when I think about this too, and I don't go over this with my class, but I think about the hypothetical, teaching the Civil Rights Acts, the Voting Rights Act, things that passed in the 60s on a bipartisan basis, right? For them to pass would never pass in 2025. Just the idea of voting rights, equal rights can never pass today. That's a crazy concept to me of where we've backslid, that you can't pass any legislation like that. But anyway, I think we'll
one last quick point to that, which is that's right. And there are all the Republicans who would have been for it, but now they're running away. They're scared of Trump. And again, it's not just the law he's influencing. It's not just his own power. It's the culture. And he's meaning to have, there's a national commitment of things we're proud of as a nation. For example, how about resettlement of refugees? What could be more American? As if it starts with I for immigration, we're chopping it off. This is a real degradation, not just of the law or constitution, as big as that is, but of who we are and what we stand for as a nation. Man, oh man, it's really coming at us, and has to be really stood up at every turn.
You think about it. Trump was sued in the 70s, him and his dad, for not letting black people into their apartments and into their condos based on civil rights violations. So here he is in 2025, taking out his revenge on LBJ and others who didn't let him discriminate. I mean, he's a real sicko. Everybody subscribe, which is putting it nicely. Subscribe to Harry Litman's Substack, the Talking Feds Substack, the Talking Feds YouTube channel, and the Talking Feds podcast. Make sure you subscribe now. It's where I get all of my legal news from. So please, everybody, check it out. And thanks for watching.
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.